is an advocate by qualification and a career coach associated with Sir Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas and Dua Associates. She is a career strategist for lawyers, chartered accountants, company secretaries, and MBAs and guides them on the seemingly complex task of resume building, interview skills, and personal branding. We are really glad to have you with us today as a trainer of our workshop. Now, without any further delay, I would like to call Miss Ashna on stage. Over to you, ma'am.
Sure. Thank you so much. So I'll just share my screen just a second. I think you'll have to give me the rights to share the screen. Okay. So see, before we begin on to say understanding that, say why should we learn how to draft a resume or say or a CV or whatever, a cover letter, how to sit for an interview, etc. We need to realize that like there are certain inherent differences between say what is a resume and what is a CV. I see a lot of people, commenting online on LinkedIn, etc. And they are always say mocking each other for say having a really long CV, or say that goes up to say 3 pages, 4 pages, and even sometimes 5 pages. So the idea is that there is an inherent difference between what is a resume and what is a CV. CV is a Latin word for curriculum vitae. It means course of life, right? So it just means essentially that you have to you have to put down all your strengths, weaknesses, all your hobbies, all your life experiences, internships, education experiences, etc. on that information booklet, and it can go up to how many ever pages, like it can go up to like 7 pages, 8 pages, etc., right? So that is a CV in the strict sense of words. However, say if you talk about what is a resume. Resume is a French word for summary, right? So now summary means that you just need to highlight your strengths, your internship experiences, and probably your publications on that piece of paper. It is usually a one pager summary, right? So the idea is that we need to understand that what is the recruiter asking from us? Like, do they want a CV? Do they want a resume? And what is it? Now, another thing is that in the Indian context, it's none of these. Like, it's neither a one pager summary nor a 7 pager or an 8 pager booklet, right? It is essentially somewhere between that. It's like a 1.5 or a 2 pager document, and that we use interchangeably as resume or a CV, right? So, next time, if somebody tries to say school you about, say, that you have a really long CV or say you have a really short resume, etc. So you know the difference, right? That there's an inherent difference between, say, these two documents. But for the purposes of this workshop, I'm going to be using it interchangeably, and then we can of course take all the questions in the end, right? So the first is that say what is the importance of learning how to draft the CV. See, the whole idea is that when I was also in law school and I was preparing for my own, interviews, I was preparing for internship interviews or say, even otherwise also like for job interviews, I was just always very flustered with the fact that why do we need to focus so much on say drafting a resume? Why can't it be just a normal piece of document which we just send across to people, right? So the whole idea is that there are a lot of factors at play. First, that it helps you only at the time of your interview. So there was this one time when I got rejected by a tier 1 band law firm of the country because of the fact that my resume it was so widely worded that I couldn't answer a lot of questions that were asked to me basis my own resume, right? So if you have a proper resume, it really helps you at the time of your interview. Next is that you're competing with the best. See, now when I say the best, I just mean everybody. Why? Because the 90% of us have almost done the same things while we were in law school. We published, we've interned, we worked at organizations and in volunteer experiences, etc. So the whole idea is that it's not like that you've done something out of the blue which will say give you an edge while you're sitting for placement, right? So you might as well have a document that showcases all your strong points right at the go to the recruiter so that they can make an informed choice, and they don't have to struggle a lot while say sifting through the resume. If they feel that your strong points are coming up front, they might as well just select you, right? See, I tell you, going through a well curated 1.5 pager or a 2 pager resume is easier than say going through a resume that is 4 5 pages long, and makes no sense, and has no structural formalities. So the point is that you need to understand that it's important for you only when you're competing with somebody who's your peer. And last is, of course, the recruiter has a very limited time frame. Why? Because see, the recruiter essentially is somebody, see, in the legal industry specifically, a recruiter is somebody who's a senior partner of a law firm or a chamber or wherever, say, you are applying. That person has a considerable experience. So in our legal industry, we don't usually have a lot of HR professionals sitting in the main rounds of the interview, right? It's almost always the lawyers who are sitting. Now, when they're lawyers, they usually have very, very limited time. Nobody's got the time to sift through a resume that goes up to 2.5, 3, 4 pages. Why? Because they don't have the time. They really don't want to go. If your strong points are showcased right at the front, or at least in the first 2 pages of the resume, that's well and good, right? So the whole idea is that you need to understand that that because the recruiter has limited time and you want to respect them, because of that you need to have this sort of a well curated resume. Now the next is that you can't just simply start drafting your resume. You need to do a lot of groundwork also before you start drafting the resume. Like, I'll take an example of an IPR law firm. Right now, an IP firm is usually like a boutique firm, as in, I'm not talking about a full service firm that where you're applying to the IP team. But say if you're applying to a law firm that is an IP boutique firm, right, you might as well want to see that what is the sort of work that they do. Do they indulge in trademark prosecution opposition? Do they indulge in IP litigation? Do they indulge in drafting of agreements related to IPR, like licensing, etc.? Right? You really need to understand that what exactly is the organization doing and what is the job posting. Basically, what is the requirement of the recruiter. Now, say if the recruiter is looking to hire somebody in the trademark prosecution team, right? And you're applying with a resume that is filled with patent related achievements, and say, or something like, say, that you worked on landmark IP litigation cases, they don't really care about that. Why? Because see, you have not fulfilled the requirement of the recruiter, right? The recruiter is going to just check that, okay, fine, the job posting said that we wanted trademark prosecution. So now what skills should you have had on the resume? Probably like filing of examination report, filing of application, etc., replying to the opposition notice, all of that, right? So point is that you need to understand that what has the job posting told me, that what is their requirement, what does the organization do, and lastly, do you have those skills? So I see, okay, so I tell you with my personal experience, when I sit and draft all these resume as a part of my career consultancy, what happens is that I come across a lot of students who tell me that, Ashna, like, we want to apply to IPR firm and this is the job posting that we have. So then I ask them that your skill set doesn't match. They say, but, we've researched on IPR, so I think that should be enough. See, if the job posting is asking for somebody specifically who's worked in the field of, say, trademark prosecution, you can't just simply go ahead and tell them that, listen, I just know how to research on IPR related things. I've just done a few courses here and there, and now I think you should just pick me. That's not how it works, right? Check your skill set, compare and contrast it with the skill set that they want in their organization, and then start applying, right? So this groundwork needs to be done before you even sit and start drafting your resume. Next is some of the do's. So update your resume on a regular basis. See why? Because like a lot of the times it happens that we just forget about what we've done at the previous internship. We really don't know what happened. We've just forgotten about it, or say we don't even recall what were the research points that were given to us, right? So you really need to update our resume on a regular basis so that you don't miss out on anything that is, say, uh, important and it should have been there. Second is state specific tasks that you undertook while you're putting down your experiences of an internship. See, I literally draft like I think around 4 to 5 resume a day. And in all the resume, there is this one common issue apart from others, is that students and even fresh graduates and even working professionals of, say, with 3 to 5 years of experience, they have not stated any specific tasks. They've written that we've researched on Companies Act, or say we've researched on Trademark Act, we've researched on Patents Act, etc., right? So that is not a specific task that you undertook there, right? You need to state down the exact research questions or the tasks that you were given there, so as to make it believable for the recruiter to, you know, understand that, okay, fine, this is something that was done specifically and they are not bluffing about it, or say they are not exactly, you know, lying about the work that they've done. Next is certificate courses. If they have a professional benefit or you have an academic inclination. See, now a lot of times I see IP students, like the people who are particularly interested in IPR, they've done a lot of courses from WIPO, right? Because they're free courses and they're really good courses also. Now the idea is that if you've done that course, you might as well just know what was there in that course, right? Just to say that I just did that course at one particular time and I don't remember, it doesn't make any sense. So if you have any professional benefit from it, if you really want to encash on the course that you've done, you might as well know what was there, right? You might as well know the contents of it. You might as well understand what the concepts were taught in that course and then put it in your resume. Next is publications from noteworthy organizations. See, again, I am not trying to say that you shouldn't publish in all spheres of law, but I feel that, say, if you're specifically focusing on, say, IPR or any other laws for that matter, right, you really need to understand that, you know, publication is something that it should be in coherence with your area of law. Like, say, for instance, you know, some of the best blogs in IPR, like, say, for instance, Spicy IP or say even IP Press, etc., right? These guys are working really hard to say, you know, curate all the good quality publications from students, from professionals, etc. Try publishing with these IPR related blogs, etc., and then go ahead and, you know, put them on your resume. Don't just publish with any random blog and then, you know, start putting all those publications in the resume, because that's not going to help you. If you don't exactly curate your resume in one line of law, that's not going to be in your favor in the longer run. Next is use bullet points wherever possible. Stop using paragraphs, tables, etc. Ancillary things such as seminars, workshops, and everything should only be included if they are in line with your area of law and if they help you in some way. Next is use easy language and reread your resume for typographical errors. See, if the recruiter is going to feel that, you know, that if you can't draft a 2-pager resume without typos, how will you draft like a 200-pager contract without typos, right? And that's going to be a very sticky situation for you to be in. So you really need to understand that this is something that, you know, you have to take care that there have to be no typos while draft the resume. So that is that. Now moving ahead, just a second. Yeah. So don't never keep a single CV for all your applications. See, you don't really need to, you know, you can't apply to, say, even an IPR. So even if, say, you're applying in the field of IPRs, if you're applying in, say, a council's chamber, of course you need to have a lot of IP litigation, IP research related things on the resume. If you're applying for prosecution team, opposition team, etc., then you need to have that sort of a procedural work on your resume, right? So you can't have a single CV for all your applications. You really need to have a lot of things that are, say, essentially, you know, particular to that area. Next is the courses done only for certifications do not have a place. We've discussed this. Paid publications should be avoided. Depends what sort of paid publication. If they're asking for processing charges, that should be fine. If they're not asking, if they're asking for publication charges, then of course you should really avoid it. Personal addresses and references should not be given unless they've asked for. A lot of people still keep putting all of those things, and it is essentially a very 90s format wherein, you know, people used to put references and then, you know, a lot of, say, high profile people's name were put there. You don't really need to do that. People can just check your profile on LinkedIn, it's fine. So you don't have to put that. Next is do not state your soft skills and hobbies in the CV unless, of course, it's the requirement from the recruiter's side that, you know, we would like to know all of that. Next is do not attach a cover letter as a part of your resume. See, that's not a part of the resume. Cover letter is the body of the email, right? So don't do that. And last is do not display a varied skill set. Why? Because you might come across as somebody who's undecided and unfocused, right? So you do not have to display that sort of a skill set. Next is applicant tracking system. So see, now I'm going to touch upon it very briefly because it's a huge issue otherwise also. I'll just tell you what exactly it is. So applicant tracking system, or ATS, is a software that runs through artificial intelligence, right? So now a lot of the people who you know, has a lot of the organizations have installed this ATS system, even in India, abroad, etc. In India, it's still coming. Now the whole idea is that when you send your resume through the ATS, they reject a lot of resume basis the data fields that they've extracted from the resume, right? So now say for instance, and you get a score. So basis that score, essentially your resume is either rejected or accepted. So it depends how good the score is. Now the score is through a lot of things. It's a keyword score. It is a way the resume is formatted. It's with a lot of things basically. And again, like I told you, like it's a huge topic otherwise. So just to give you a brief, that it really depends on a lot of keywords that you use. So like say if you're applying to IP firms, right? Of course your keyword should be somewhere on IP laws, trademark, patent, copyright, etc. Whatever it is, essentially you really need to understand that this is something that like you need to incorporate in the resume to increase your keyword score in the resume. Next is that avoid tables, avoid borders, avoid fancy formatting at all costs, because that is something that doesn't go through the ATS. So something that is not text is not basically compliant with the ATS, right? So you try and avoid that. Next is that you can use common headings like say summary, education, professional experience, etc. So you can even use all of that. And essentially, when you use all of these common headings of say summary, education, professional experience, your keyword search increases, because this is the data field that the ATS was looking for. Like say for instance, if instead of education, you've written something as random as say, where did I study in the resume as a heading, right? So now the ATS doesn't know if you've actually put in your education in this or not, right? So you really need to understand that as well. Next is symbols and designs should be avoided at all costs. Like don't I'm sure you all must have seen all of those word documents wherein MS Word gives a lot of resume templates wherein it's very fancy. It has a lot of borders and like blue sort of a thing at the left side wherein it makes it a very design heavy resume. Try and avoid that. Why? Because symbols and designs cannot be in line with the ATS and your resume is going to get rejected. It's not even going to reach the human eyes. So that is something that you need to take care of, right? Moving ahead, so this is the structure of the resume that of course you all can follow, and this is something that I usually follow for myself. I have been following it from law school even till date. So name, professional email ID, no fancy funny email IDs, nothing that shows your inclination towards a particular religion, race, etc., nothing like that. So name, email ID, contact number, they should be right at the top and they should be center aligned. Skill set if specifically asked for. Now say if you're an IP student, you have an option of say giving skill sets such as like filing examination reports, filing notice of opposition, etc., filing a trademark application. You can show a skill set like that, but again, when I draft a resume, I usually avoid all of this. Why? Because it isn't exactly something that you should just put it out. It should reflect from your own internship experiences that you've had. So if somebody's gotten the resume drafted from me, they already know that I draft it in a way that shows that the internship experiences covers all sort of skills that they've acquired all throughout and which are necessary for them to say get a job or anything. Then of course education, then certifications, work experience, internships, and other ancillary things. How are you going to put it? Like say moot court activities, or otherwise say co-curricular activities, extracurricular activities, and all of that, volunteer experiences. So this is the format that I use, and if you want, let me take a screenshot or something. Next is frequently asked questions. So how to justify employment gaps. See, if you have employment gaps, you don't need to don't justify it, because life happens to everybody. So it's fine even if say you didn't want, like if you're not working for some particular period of time. Like say now within this pandemic, a lot of people didn't get jobs from say 2020 and even till date, right, after they graduated. That doesn't mean that that you're not good enough or something. The employer understands that life happens, the pandemic has happened and everything has happened, so it's fine. You really need to be honest. So don't try and fixate the dates accordingly, that that this is that don't try and intermingle the dates on the resume for your internship experiences or your previous employments, etc., because they are going to do a background check and then they'll ultimately understand that you've lied to them, so they'll never hire you for that, right? So that is another thing. Next is that should achievements from high school be included? You can if they are exemplary or say extraordinary. Should we accommodate awards and honors? Depends if they are in line with your interest and if one or two awards are fine. Volunteer work should be included in limited capacity. Do I include my marks or GPA? Yes, you include your marks, GPA, because even if say you have very less marks, like I have witnessed a lot of students who say that, we got really less marks in 12th standard, we really don't want to put it, but that's not a choice. They're anyway going to ask you those marks, so it's not like that you can, chicken out of that situation. So you really need to be upfront about the marks. It's fine, it's really okay even if you have less marks. How should I explain to the recruiter that I'm open to relocation? Through either your cover letter or otherwise, generally in the interview. Next is how am I passionate, again through the interview. And how to make a switch after you spent a majority time in one job is how, like you essentially need to understand that even if say you've spent like say 5 to 7 years at one job, right? You must be exposed to a lot of different sort of work scenarios, right? And that might have helped you gain different sort of skill set each time when you were exposed to different work scenarios. So which is why I feel that, that it's fine even if say you're switching after a long period of time, you can always say that I was exposed to diverse things there. So that is something that is that. So I'll just quickly start off with the interview skills, and then of course we can have the question answer round. So, see, what are the different stages of an interview? First is the HR round, next is the technical round, and third is the behavioral round. So, it doesn't really, a lot of law firms don't really have it together. They don't really have it separately. They might have only one round. They might have like 5 rounds. There are a lot of law firms who have 5 rounds of interview, but it's usually, say, centered around these three things. To first know about you as a person. Next is to know your area of interest, to see that whether you have technical knowledge of that. And third is of course to test your value ethics and say your loyalty towards the organization, right? So now I'm going to discuss in detail say about these HR questions and everything. Like say now the HR question essentially, like I told you, they want to know about your interest area, about say whether you are actually made for this job, and to know about your personality. So say for instance, in your introduction, you might want to bring up that you were a science student, and how hence I think picking up IPR was say a very valid option for you, or say the only possible option for you, or something to showcase that that you had a very nice transition from say from your 12th standard to the law field, and then to say specifically IPR, right? Or any other area of law for that matter. So you need to understand that you need to bring out a personality in front of them that is acceptable in the law firm scenario. And secondly, that they feel that you're adaptable to say conditions, or say situations that are say not in favor of you, right? So you need to understand that HR questions are to check your soft skills, your priorities. You don't have to treat it like a question answer session. You need to treat it more like a conversation. You need to strike a conversation with the recruiter, because this round is essentially to know about your background and to essentially break ice with the recruiter and the candidate, right? So if say if the HR doesn't feel that that you're an approachable person in the HR round, they might not even proceed nicely in the technical round, right? So you need to understand that this round will set the tone of the interview. That will it be a friendly tone, will it be a strictly formal tone, etc., will it be a semi-casual tone? So you really need to see that are you leaving any sort of red flags while you were answering the HR questions. So that is the first thing. Next is that how should you start preparing for technical round? See, don't directly jump into the preparation, because there are a lot of times they've given you cues as to say, or clues like as to say, what needs to be prepared. I'll tell you how. First is that if they've told you who is the interviewer, most of the questions will be from there. Why? Because see, I'll tell you my example. When I was sitting for one of the law firm interviews, that partner kept asking me questions on arbitration, right? And I had nowhere on the resume mentioned arbitrations. Later, I found out that that partner was majoring in arbitration and he was a disputes lawyer. So, of course, like, I should have understood it right at the start that if the partner who's interviewing me, say if that partner is an IP person, is a project finance person, etc., is that going to impact my interview? And yes, that is going to impact the interview. So if possible, try and always check with the HR that who is going to interview you. If they reveal it, it's fine. If they don't, then of course you have a hard look. But most of the times these days HRs are fine in revealing that who's going to interview you. Next is that they're going to ask you that how many rounds are there. Like say essentially, say like if they tell you that there's only going to be one round, then you need to understand that mostly it will be a technical sort of a thing. Why? Because in one round they don't have enough time to say go through everything related to your hobbies, etc., and all of that. So you need to understand that if say there are a lot of rounds, you have to essentially make up your mind accordingly and then start preparing. Because say if they tell you that the first round is the technical round, and then you keep preparing for HR questions, that's not going to help you, right? So you need to understand and you need to ask them that how many rounds are there. Next is that can you call someone for a clarification? See, most of the times in the email they've said that if there are any doubts, you can just reply back or you can just call us back on this number. Always call back. Most of the time, most of the people don't call back on that number or they don't ask any doubts. Try and ask doubts. Try and ask questions like that, what sort of round will it be? Who's going to be interviewing you? What sort of questions can I expect? Is it going to be a technical sort of a thing? Should I focus more on my resume? And I'm sure if they've told you that they'll help you, they will give you some clue, right? So you really need to call them up and ask for this clarification. And next is that you need to understand that, oh, are they interviewing you for a specific team? Because if they are, then of course most of the questions are going to be from there, irrespective of whatever is there on your resume. So even if say your resume is mostly on copyrights and say they are interviewing you for trademark prosecution, you need to understand that most of the questions will be from there, right? So that is that. Technical round mein they can ask you anything, like they can ask you updated information about the resume and every single word that is mentioned. So you can't essentially tell them that, listen, I worked here, I interned at this place like way back in the past, so I'm not really sure as to say what happened on this research after that. You can't. You need to update yourself on every research point that you've mentioned. Next is area of interest, latest development. Like say if you are interested in IP, I'm sure you're already following a lot of IP blogs and websites and everything, wherein say you understand what are the latest developments and of course the basics. Like somebody is asking you and you're sitting for a trademark team, somebody is asking you that what are the grounds of refusal of trademarks. So you need to be able to tell them that there are some absolute grounds, there are some relative grounds of refusal. So that is that. And next is that of course commercial awareness, generic commercial awareness, like say what is happening in the country. And next is subject specific, like say if there is some very landmark case that has come out, or say some very technology giant has lent over their IPR to somebody else. So you really need to understand that there are certain things that you need to know and which you'll only know if say you keep reading blogs, if you keep reading newspaper articles, etc. So you need to keep yourself updated about these technical things, right? This is exactly what comes in the technical round. Next is that some points that you should definitely keep in mind. Of course, major work areas of the firm that you're applying to, you need to understand what's the firm majors in. Next is what sort of things that they've recently handled. Are there any cases? Are there any deals? Have they helped in some sort of IPR acquisition, etc.? You need to understand. Then latest resume should go for the interview and check that, if the latest resume has not gone, which resume has gone. Check with the HR because, we usually apply like say 5-6 months in advance. So now when we are applying like that, of course, there might be a lot of things that are not there in the resume. So check with the HR if you can, send them a new resume. And if not, then of course you have to prepare according to the old resume, right? Divide the number of days and hours for each section. Practice your HR answers with somebody. See, again, the point is, somebody asks you even right now that, can you introduce yourself? A lot of us are going to start stuttering. Why? Because we've not practiced that. We know it in our head that, okay, this is somebody, this is our introduction. So try and practice your HR answers before you say, and even technical questions before say, you go out and give the interview. So that is that. Now, very quickly, I'll run you through the general code of conduct. Like say, reach before time, or if say, if it's an online interview, install the application before time. Always have a backup plan, and say if if your laptop doesn't work at that particular point of time, you should be able to do it on the phone. Next is research about the number of members in the panel and about them. Next, enter the room with a pleasant attitude and a pleasant smile. Practice your greetings. Like, a lot of times we enter the room and it's really awkward, like nobody's talking, or say you don't know how, if you should say good evening, good afternoon, etc. So try and practice your greetings. And then of course, if you're not doing it on phone, if you're not doing not using mobile data, you can of course switch off your mobile phone and you should remove all distractions. That is a general code of conduct. Now, dress appropriately. What I mean by appropriately is that you don't always need to dress in, say, business formals. You need to understand where are you applying to, what is the sort of organization, and what is their general, code of conduct for uh, the dressing sense, etc. Like, say, if you're applying to a law firm, they might be okay with any sort of formals, be it Indian formals, Western formals. If you're applying to, say, a litigation chamber, they might again be comfortable with anything, Indian formals, Western formals. If you're applying to a startup, they might be comfortable with semi business casuals, etc. Right? So you really need to understand that which place are you applying to, and then try and dress up accordingly. Check wherever, be presentable, tidy, neat, etc. And then check where the interview is set. Like, say, sometimes a lot of startup founders would call you, say, for an interview in, say, a cafe, right? You can't just dress up in business formals and go to a cafe. Try and tone down your formals, make it business casuals, and then of course you can go for that interview, right? So understand where is the meeting exactly happening, what is the interview setting in place, right? Next is, during the interview, of course, make body language, like you should be sitting upright, you shouldn't be slouching. Then make eye contact, of course. Choose your location, like, you don't want a location which has like random backgrounds or anything. Try and choose a plain background sort of a location. Keep your materials in hand. A lot of the times, a lot of people say, okay, fine, can you please check your resume at this point? So now you will be like, sorry, I don't have my resume. Can I open it in my file, right? You don't need to struggle with the documents that they're asking. Try and have it in print. If not in print, at least open a specific tab of your resume only on the bar. And next is, no other tabs on the web. Why? Because you can't have WhatsApp opening, LinkedIn, etc. opened on your other tabs. Why? Because on the search bar. Why? Because it just creates a lot of distraction and it's very unprofessional. So no other tabs according to that, right? After the interviews, at this point is really important, and a lot of us have missed out on this point, that you should always send a thank you message to the HR on the interviews. Why? Because, see, it was ultimately the HR, right, that who arranged this interview. So if you can send a thank you message to them, it's going to be easier for them also. It will make them also feel good, and they are going to be more proactive in, say, following up on your case with the partners, right? So always send a thank you message and ask the HR when can you follow up, so that you have a timeline in mind that, okay, fine, this is the date when the HR has herself or themselves told to, or himself told to, follow up. So then you can follow up at that point, right? So that is that. And for any queries, of course, you can contact me on this email ID, and I'm very active on my Instagram handle and even LinkedIn. So yeah, we can all connect there. So if there are any doubts, I'll be happy to take.
All right, so now the floor is open for questions, and if anyone has any question from the audience, they can put them in the chat box, and I'll take them up with ma'am. So we have a question. What question should we ask in? Do you have any questions for me towards the end of the interview?
Okay, that's a very good question that you asked me right now. So, see, the point is that, you essentially need to understand that asking all the random questions, like, say, what will be an associate's role, or what will be my job responsibility, etc., that ideally you should know. Your research should have told you that what will be your role there, right? Or asking questions like, what will be the next round of interview, etc. That is the ideally the HR's duty to inform you, not the partner's duty. So stop asking all these bland questions. Ask some policy issue that relates to the law firm, something that they were in news for, something that they have handled recently, some sort of policy decision that they have taken up for their own law firm, so that it ignites some sort of curiosity in them, that that you've studied about their organization, and that you're willing to, say, contribute and, say, have a discussion on that. So ideally you should ask some policy based questions in that sense.
Another question is, how important is it to participate in moot court competitions?
I mean, it is fairly important because, see, as a law student, of course, this is one of the activities that, that sets you apart from, say, other professional studies, like, say, an MBA, engineering, etc., or CA for that matter. There are no moot courts. Moot court happens only in law school, right? So I feel that taking part in at least one moot court would be, I mean, at least a good option. Unless, I mean, of course, there is no, say, it's not compulsory, but yes, you should ideally take part in one. So yeah.
How to start with IPR internships?
How to start? See, start with a publication. send it out to a mid-sized or a medium-sized IP firm, send it out to a blog, etc., and along with your resume, and say that that this is something that you've already done. Take some free courses from Vipo that will add to your skill set, learn whatever is taught there actually, and then apply. Of course, a lot of firms are very welcoming of such people who at least published something, or say, who done Vipo courses, because Vipo courses are really, so you should be doing them. So yeah, and they're all free also anyway. So you can do that. And then of course, I mean, start your internship with a blog, started with a journal, started with a mid-sized law firm. I'm of course, I mean, I'm sure that they are going to be accepting of it. So
Right.
yeah.
How does it make sense to send your application on career email ID of a firm?
I mean, where else can you send it, right? I mean, I get that a lot of the times they don't reply to all of those emails, but that is your only best bet, right? Like, say if you don't have a referral from somebody, how else are you going to approach the law firm? You have to apply to that email. So yeah.
Another question is, what should we answer when we want to switch our job?
Sorry, when we want to? Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Switch
Can you
our
repeat?
job.
Switch our job. So what
Yeah,
exactly is the
so it
question?
says, yeah, yeah, so it's written here, what should we answer when we want to switch our job? I think,
I don't think I understood the question. Yeah, we can move on to the next.
right. Is there scope in media law in India to practice?
Yes, of course, it's growing. It's not as big as of now, but yes, it is growing.
Yeah. The next question is, how to follow up firms where you have applied for internships?
So you can always send up a follow-up email after like a week or so. You can call them up after 2-3 weeks of following up. That's it. And I mean, of course, like you can check on my page as well, on Instagram page. I've given out a lot of tips on how to follow up, on which days, which times to follow up. So you can follow that as well. I made a full-fledged post on that. So yeah.
Okay, so here's another question. Please tell us about some blogs that can be followed to keep our information updated regarding IPR.
I think IP Press is like really doing great job. So you guys can follow them, of course. And secondly, apart from that, I think Spicy IP is one of the best in the country. I mean, so yeah, that you can follow, because it was run by late Professor Shamnath Bashir, and so that blog has been even cited in Bombay High Court judgment. So you can follow both of these
Hmm.
blogs.
Another question is, what to tell when they ask how much are you expecting with respect to salary and how to negotiate?
So again, a very good question. See, it depends now where are you applying. If you see that, IP boutique firms usually have a range of salary that they can offer, which is say somewhere around 30,000 to say 50,000, right? That is somewhere that they can offer per month. So you should
Hmm.
ideally have a mindset that, okay, this is their paying capacity. So do your research first, that what is the paying capacity. You need to then of course range it somewhere there, and then of course you can say that if you have any relocation charge, if you have any relocation expenses, or you can always say that you want to now become independent, you can't just stay with your parents, etc. And then you'll have to say that some figure that essentially is say falling. If you say, I'll give you an example, like if you say that I'm expecting anything upwards of say 40,000, right? Then they're going to ask you to justify why 40,000 a month. Then you tell them that relocation expenses, I want to become independent, etc., all of that, and then just club it all and say that this is something that I would be expecting right at the start. So yeah, that's that. See, of course everybody wants to it's like bring you down to a level wherein say it's the lowest for them, but of course you need to justify and be upfront. So be upfront about your skill set, about whatever you're bringing to the table, and I think that's going to help you negotiate the salary.
Right. Another question is, which round should
We'll
we
just
prepare?
take 2-3 more questions, right?
All right, all right. So
Okay.
another question is, which round should we prepare for when it says it will be a short interview over a phone call?
So then, of course, your resume, technical round, and HR round combined. So you don't really have a clue as to that, right? You can, of course, call up the HR and ask about it, but I feel that it's a combination of everything. They're going to, of course, focus on your resume and the basics of that subject.
One more question is, what pointers should we include while introducing ourselves in an interview?
So again, a very good question. Like your city and about your parents and about your family, etc. What all do they do and your hobbies. You never focus on anything that is already written on the resume, right? So try and bring out some different points about your personality so that they actually introduce you, right? So that is something that you should bring out. Very good question.
One more question is, if a student has more corporate law internships than IPR internships, what should be his approach if he wants to make a career in IPR? Also, if a person takes corporate law job in pandemic due to lack of openings in IPR, how can such a candidate take a recourse to IPR?
See, of course, start off with publication. Publication is the first thing that is going to look like, say that showcase your inclination towards it. And of course, if you want to switch, you can't just switch suddenly if, say, you have a lack of IPR options, right, on your resume. You need to start off with long-term internships or traineeships. Even if, say, you've taken a job, doing a traineeship after a job is also fine. So you need to make peace with the fact that if I want to switch, I need to have some cost associated with it, right? There is always a switching cost which comes with it. Like even when I left my job at SAM and I switched to Dua, I interned with them for two weeks, 2 months, right? So that is something that you need to make peace with. And yeah, I mean, then if you do a traineeship, then it'll be easier for you to make the switch. So yeah, I think that will be all for the questions from my side.
All right. Thank you very much, ma'am. That was really helpful and enlightening. And to conclude this session, I would like to thank everyone for this wonderful and informative session. It was a delight to have you with us today. I would like to extend heartfelt gratitude to Ms. Ashna Jan for giving us her precious time. We could not have had a better speaker and a trainer for the workshop. Thank you so much, ma'am. And lastly, I would like to thank the IP Press for this wonderful opportunity. Stay tuned and in touch to receive information and about further events by the IP Press. You can get in touch with us by following us on the IP Press on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. With this, we come to an end. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.